Hey everybody, this week's album of the week is The Smiths, The Queen is Dead. So I've never really been much of a Smiths fan, and that's not because I didn't like their music, just because it really comes down to, you see, I was born in the late 80s, and my parents, when I came around, were older. My dad was born in 1935, and it surprises a lot of people when I say that, but it's true. And so he was 53 when I was born, and my mom was born in 52. So of course he was 17 years her senior. But in any case, she was a teenager during the Summer of Love, you know, when Woodstock was going around. So she grew up with that music of the 60s, of the Grateful Dead and the Who and the Animals and all that stuff. And so as a kid growing up in the early 90s and middle 90s, that's what I kind of fell in love with listening to. And as an adult, of course, I've gotten into jazz and R&B and classic soul and all kinds of different types of music. But primarily that was my first love, was sort of the classic rock era of the late 60s and kind of the 70s. And so, you know, for me too, I never really had that perspective of growing up in the 80s or being a teenager and having kind of that 80s vibe, you know, the kind of the Ferris Bueller mentality or whatever, or that angsty kind of 80s mentality that, you know, you saw portrayed in kind of 80s movies about teenagers, you know. But in any case, you know, over the past year or so, I notice, and maybe you have too, you go into anywhere. It could be a gas station, a grocery store, a waiting room to get your teeth cleaned at the dentist, and you'll hear Smith songs playing. And I know they're Smith songs, even though I don't know the songs. I know they're Smith songs because Morrissey, the singer for the Smiths, he kind of has a very distinctive singing voice. And so I'm like, I know it's Morrissey, and if I know it's Morrissey, then, well, it's got to be the Smiths, although Morrissey did have a kind of a solo career as well after the Smiths kind of broke up or separated or whatever you want to say. But I decided to pick this up because, and number one, I saw it at Barnes & Noble. They had it on a discount. So I was like, hey, what a bargain. Number two, I looked it up. This particular pressing is a 2009 remaster that was apparently done by a guy, Arkman, or Arkwright is his last name, from Abbey Road Studios, who's very famous for doing his remastering and kind of the way he does it and the quality. It was also overseen by a guy named Johnny Marr, which was a member of the Smiths as well. And from, you know, most of the reviews of this particular pressing, and of course being a remaster, were very positive. You know, people compared it to the original UK pressings and things and said, well, this is far better, far more phenomenal sounding, better bass, better separation. It doesn't sound as thin, which of course, as a lot of you might know, a lot of 80s pressings, you know, in music in general kind of could have a sort of a thin sound. But regardless, it's a very fantastic album, and it contains one of the songs that I've been hearing at the supermarket, which is There's a Light That Never Goes Out. It's a fantastic song. I do kind of feel that side B is a little bit stronger than side A in my personal taste kind of opinion. Or I should say maybe I like side B better than A. But regardless, it's a fantastic album overall. If you've never heard the Smiths, I suggest this kind of starting with. I've streamed a lot of their other albums, the original, you know, The Smiths, their, you know, eponymous first album, and Meat is Murder and a few others. And this is by far my favorite. And if you look online, this seems to be kind of what a lot of people kind of, you know, sort of from a rear perspective kind of view as kind of their magnum opus, if you want to call it that. Of course, there's probably a lot of opinions on that about, you know, Meat is Murder is the best album or so on and so forth. But yeah, it's a fantastic album, fantastic pressing, which is really good to know because of the sound. Like I said, bass sounds great, sounds taut and tuneful. Very, very good album. And like I said, if you've never heard the Smiths, check it out. But anyway, peace out and